Wow.
He got up with zeal.
Yeah, that was zealous. Appreciate that zealous activity. Right now. That's right. Okay, so now, dear ones, we're going to go ahead and start marching through here. It's 7:10, so these first ones go pretty quick. But in this packet, as you heard, we will come face to face with many things that will be challenging for our lives, and definitely that are counterculture to the world that we live in. So here we go. 26.1. That it is necessary to confirm every word or matter with the testimony of the God-breathed scriptures, so that the good is established and the evil reproached. And this passage comes from Matthew 4:3-4. And the tempter came to him and said, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." But he answered, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God." And then Acts 2-4, and then 12-17, it says this. And they were all filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak with other tongues as the Spirit gave them utterance. And all were amazed and perplexed, saying to one another, "What might this mean?" But others, mocking, said, "They are filled with new wine." But Peter, standing with the 11, lifted up his voice and addressed them, "Men of Judea, and all who dwell in Jerusalem, let this be known to you, and give ear to my words. For these men are not drunk, as you suppose, since it is only the third hour of the day. But this is what was spoken by the prophet Joel. And in the last days it shall be, God declares, that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and they shall prophesy. And what follows? Of course, this is why I want everybody to read the Old Testament, because they're talking about the Old Testament here, definitely. And there is a side lesson here, that in the first passage here, the Satan used the scriptures to try to get his will done, and Christ responded back with the proper use. So one could say, well, Father, don't people use the scriptures today because they believe in sola scriptura and then they just believe whatever they want? And the answer is, well, that is true. So when he wrote this, there was no concept of sola scriptura. So he's talking to people inside of the church who would basically have known the scriptures and known how the church viewed those scriptures. So what he's saying is, know the scriptures and know how the church understands them. Not just know the scriptures and come up with your own. Does that make sense? Because this could be misunderstood, like, well, yeah, I mean, I believe this, and this is why I don't wear a head covering, because my husband is my covering. Something like this, which is definitely not that's common. It's pretty new. The most recent one that was more common in my day was the hair is the covering. That's a pretty common one. But this other one is a newer one. Which is really, because it's like pretty crazy. Like, how could you even come up with that? It's not even textual, But
I had a discussion with the church that I was part of, and his idea was the reason why a woman needs a head covering is if she's a pastor against her husband's will. So then she should do it. But as long as she has her husband's approval to be a pastor, she don't need it.
That's also very weird. I did actually write a paper on this subject last year, my New Testament class, and so it's called expository inductive Bible study paper. Anyways, this is very big and long, and it takes a lot of work, and like if you have time to do this, come talk to me, because you're probably not doing something right. If you have this much time to do this stuff, or you're an academic, which is fine, that's your job, or you're a pastor, and you don't have time to do this, but you're encouraged to do it anyway, because that's what our bishops want us to preach, better sermons than we do. Anyway, but I read some crazy stuff like that, like just stuff. I'm like, because you have to go and see what the Orthodox taught, what the fathers taught, what common Orthodox people teach, and what the heretics also are saying about this. And there was just, I mean, when I looked at this 26 years ago and we just got married, it was very limited. Like most people just say, oh, it was cultural, or the hair is a covering. Now, there is just so many. I mean, it's crazy the different views on this that you can find. And it's because the difference in 26 years is there was maybe 2 or 3, 5,000 denominations back 26 years ago. Now there's like tens of thousands, like 40,000. And everybody's their own pope, and so they get to make their own things, and it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Get a nice journal and get going. Make your own religion. So, okay, with that, we keep going. That it is necessary also to use things known in nature and life experience for the establishing matters in words. Jesus says in Matthew 7:15-17, beware of the false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. So Basil's point is that it's good to use earthly examples that will emphasize the point that you're trying to make. Be careful, they come in sheep's clothing, but are ravenous wolves, or you will know them by their fruits. Grapes are not gathered from thorn bushes or figs, but and so forth. So that's his point there. And then he goes on, no soldier on service gets entangled with civilian pursuits, since his aim is to satisfy the one who enlisted him. The athlete is not crowned unless he competes according to the rules. So there are some more examples. 27.1, that it is necessary not to be like those estranged from the teaching of the Lord, but to mimic God and his saints as he has empowered us. Matthew 20, verses 25-28 says this, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great men exercise authority over them. It shall not be so among you, but whoever will be first among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be your slave, even if as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom. So here we see that he's using this because we see that Jesus Christ did not come to be served, but he came to serve and give his life. So we should follow them and not the examples of those who are worldly people, like the worldly rulers who are great men exercising authority over you. We're not supposed to be like those leaders. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that you may prove what is the will of God. And be imitators of me, as I am of Christ. So here, St. Basil is making this very, very clear. You need to, when you're looking for examples in your life, look to the ones who are keeping the teachings of Christ and are zealously holding to them and trying to do them with their whole heart. Mm-hmm. Because you're going to find a whole bunch of other people, like you might be interested, like I was talking with somebody earlier tonight, in getting some education. Maybe you want to learn how to be a woodworker or learn how to do trees or something, and you can start watching all sorts of videos on woodworking, and you can, or homesteading, or whatever thing it is, business, whatever it is that you want to learn, and next thing you know, that is who you begin to mimic. Wrong. You have the one thing that is most important, which is Christ. And the way you become like him is by mimicking him, knowing his teachings, and then finding people who really have taken his teachings and apply them, even though people may think that they're crazy. And then beyond that, you have need for food and drink and clothing and shelter. So you have some sort of a job to meet that, but that is not your life. Does that make sense? And so you need to be really, really, really careful when it comes to beginning to investigate and start watching all sorts of whatever, or reading books, or getting all the books, or you're going to become a beekeeper. And that doesn't mean that if you're going to become a beekeeper, you do need to read a lot of stuff, because there's a lot of stuff you have to know, or all of your bees will die, and this is true. Like if you get ready to go and start doing a tree business, you need to read, or else you're going to probably kill yourself, because that's a very, one of the top 2 most dangerous jobs in the country, top 3 or something. So you need to know. I'm not saying not educate yourself, but I am saying do not be one of these people who just go and find it and start mimicking these people who have all these other careers. So it's really important to be careful about that. 28.1, that it is necessary not to be carried away simply by it's a mouthful here. That it is necessary not to be carried away simply or gullibly by those playing at the truth, but to recognize each from the description given by the scripture. So there's going to be a lot of people who are going to come, and they're going to have good words, and they're going to talk, and they're going to be able to really beef it up because they want people to follow them. Okay? But beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will know them by your fruits. By this all men will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. Therefore, I want you to understand that no one speaking by the Spirit of Christ ever said, Jesus be accursed. So one of the take-homes from that is you're going to hear a lot of people, usually false prophets or heretics, usually don't come off as really hard or abrasive or whatever. They usually are smooth and suave, and they are good at sweeping people off their feet in a mental sense, right? So if you familiarize yourself with the Shepherd of Hermas, which is on your reading list, what you'll find is that it is a very hard, like you'll read it and it's like, oh, it's like getting punched in the stomach. Like, so when you hear somebody in the church say, yeah, that is something you want to avoid, and you're kind of disappointed because you really wanted to do this or do that, you probably can just in general feel like this is probably safe because my flesh wanted to do this thing, and the teacher or the catechist or the priest or the deacon said, no, we don't do that. You know what I'm saying? So like that's the job of the dad. Does anybody remember when you were younger and you would want to do something, and I have this little girl who wants to drive the mower all the time, and she'll come to me, Dad, can I drive the mower up to the shop? And I say almost always, no, I don't think so. And I know that her heart's probably beating like, I hope Dad doesn't say no. I hope Dad doesn't say no. You remember those feelings when you would go to your dad and you're like, I'm not going to ask him, because if I do, he'll just say no. But if I don't ask him and I do it and he finds out, then I'm in big trouble. So I'll just ask him, but you're like full of trepidation the whole time and you're scared. anyways, the same way in the truth and with the church, there will be a lot of times that you will want to know something, or you want to do something, and you'll ask, because it's better to ask and hear no, and then instead of doing it and get in trouble or something, or you don't get in trouble really, you just get reproved, like don't do that, that's very bad. At any rate, all I'm trying to say is wolves come in sheep's clothing, and a lot of times a true follower of God is going to be a pastor who is like a shepherd that's keeping his flock really taken care of, which means sometimes he's got to whack him with the shepherd's rod.
I actually always struggle with this particular verse, and it's not because of guidance from a father or a pastor, but it's like, so you see somebody who's a pastor, and they have, they believe in the Lord, whether it's sola scriptura or not, but it's like they're obeying, because the Bible says, they don't rebuke them, because they're doing it in my name, right? And so they're doing something in the name of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
They're good people. They're pastors of churches, like the church I was part of. They run a homeless shelter. They run a food kitchen. They even run a thing where people that are poor can go and they can get financing to help them get off the street.
Right.
I mean, their fruit is very good that way. So how do you not see them like okay, they got that fruit?
Well, this could come off as really arrogant, but they're just not in the church. So they're not in the church that Christ started. So, but because most of us are converts, and we are all, our context is Protestant church, we will slowly be pulling our mind out of oh yeah, that's a legitimate church, when it's not. You wouldn't think the atheist group who does exactly the same thing, you wouldn't be like, well, I can, they have something valuable to say about God because they're doing all these things,
But they actually, he would claim, okay, we're doing this for Jesus, this is the Lord,
Yeah, and I think that they probably, from the best of their ability, they just don't know that the church is there. Some of them don't know. Some of them do know and then just reject it. Then if they have given it a good look and then they reject it, then they become straight up false prophets.
If they don't know and they're doing good fruit, then what do we judge that as?
We don't judge at all.
Well, I just meant common sense judge, not we'll judge you.
Oh, perception. How do we perceive that?
Yeah.
Well, it's good. I mean, I'm glad to see people are, doing something good. We can be happy, that, because God makes the rain fall on the good and on the wicked, and He can use anything. He could raise up praise from stones. Jesus said, He can raise up the worship of God through the stones that He has. So He's going to get done what He wants done. And we have to understand, the Lord loves the poor, and He's going to take care of them if there's somebody willing to take care of them. What's going to happen, though, is that if that person willfully rejects the reality of the church, is that they'll be judged for that, because they're rejecting the incarnation of Christ. They're rejecting the incarnation of Christ, like we talked about a little bit last week. But what will happen is those people will rise up at the judgment, and they will condemn those in the Orthodox Church who did not do this. Just like Jesus says. He says, in the last day, he was talking to the people in Israel, he said, in the last day, the people in Nineveh and in Sodom will rise up and they'll condemn you. He's talking to the Jews, because they repented at the preaching of the prophet, but you didn't. And Paul says that the Gentiles will blaspheme God because the sinfulness that is inside of the church. So I don't know. It's not our place to figure out how they will be judged by God, but we can say, like, we should learn from them, and it should be us who are doing those things. It should be us that's taking care of the poor. It should be us that are reaching out. Like, these are very good things, and they're honorable things, and we should laud them and say, hey, well done. You're doing a good job. Come and enter into the church. Come in.
Like this particular pastor, I told him that I was going to the Orthodox Church, and I explained to him how the Catholics came out in 1054, and then Luther and Zwingli and everybody else was after that. And with that, he went around telling everybody I went back to the Mennonites. And so both Peter, me, and I had a guy put in my air conditioning unit have gone to him and told him, no, I'm not going back to the Mennonites. I went back to the Orthodox Church. And he's still thinking, like, either a Mennonite or Catholic. It's like, but he's a pastor.
He just doesn't know.
Like,
No, I mean, so there was this Tucker Carlson, I know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Father Stephen's using Tucker Carlson again, but I mean, God is working in Tucker Carlson's heart. He's trying to make him become a Orthodox Christian, I am convinced, but there's just too many Orthodox people who make excuses for violence. I think that's the one catch, because Tucker Carlson knows that we are supposed to love our enemies. It's unequivocal. It's unequivocal. The early church, Christ himself, anyway. But he had on some guy who was a writer, and he was talking about Zionism, but he was talking about, well, how did Zionism get here? And he did a great job talking about this guy, John Darby, who was the father of, it's a modern day Marcionism, but he started what is called dispensationalism, which is our modern day dispensationalism, which then was taken by this guy Schofield, who then went to Oxford somehow, and Satan then was able to use Oxford and get Schofield's notes, which were basically the notes from John Darby, written on the sides of his Bible, and that was actually one of the first study Bibles ever produced. But it was then produced and shipped out to America to rule America, where all these low churches, like folk Christianity, which is basically like somebody saying, oh, I think we're going to have a church, and they just start a church, and they split off of one. But low educated, no seminary training, no historical Christian training, no just like, here's your Bible and you're a good speaker and go get them, boy, because we see that you're zealous. Bad set of criterion to put somebody in the pastorate. You have guys that are 19, 20, 21 who have no life experience at all being put into the pastorate. Then they think that they know everything, and then they get this Schofield Bible and start studying, and that is what started, Zionism. But it's that kind, because it teaches that, like dispensationalism teaches Zionism, like, because they're all focused toward the end times, and the end times can't happen unless the temple is reestablished, so Jerusalem has to be. But anyways, this is not about Zionism. I can talk about that sometime, because it's kind of interesting how it all started, because it's just so intellectually zero, but it was an atheist who was able to convince dispensationalists, like, oh yeah, God is working, even though the atheist didn't even believe in God, but he knew he could bamboozle these uneducated, superstitious-y, emotional type of people into believing this fairy tale, so that they would be able to convince, because it's very populous. Because John Darby and the Schofield Bible swept like fire across the whole country, and it was very populous. And so people all over the country then got on this bandwagon, and when you can get the populace to get a certain idea, then they can force their politicians to do anything. That's why, like, people used to be able to drink alcohol, and it was like an old world thing, and there was some people who abused it and got drunk and they hurt their wives and stuff. But then the populace got on board, and then they outlawed alcohol, but the result was a way worse mess. And then another populist movement was outlaw cigarettes and all of these things. I'm not for people having bad habits. I'm just saying, like, you can convince the population to do something. And typically what these people who are behind the scenes are not even Christians, but they convince evangelical women's groups in all of these churches, and then these women go back to their husbands and their pastors, and they're like, you have to call the congressman, you have to do this. And this is also what happened with Zionism. And but Zionism is way more powerful than, like where they outlawed alcohol and cigarettes and all of these things, But anyways, all of this happens. The Roman Catholics, the Latins, the Orthodox, the Coptics, the Anglicans, the Lutherans, none of these people were affected by any of these different populist things that I gave. Why? Because their leadership were reasonable, thoughtful, and educated. So they weren't easily moved by an emotional argument. And I'm not trashing people who are not educated at all. I'm not doing that at all. I mean, I come from a people of uneducated people. I'm Mr. LD himself, like learning disability class right here, guys. So I'm not against, I'm not against people who are uneducated, but I am saying, like, it has some negative effects. This is why leaders should be taught. They should have a level so they can protect their people. Anyways, that's what happened. So that's why you have people who can do, really moved to do some good things, but just be totally off theologically, and just totally, and then they'll come and they may ask questions that can't even be answered. Like, I've had young men come to me and just ask me questions that, they're just such bad questions, they can't even be answered. And I just I don't even know how to begin to answer this question, because it's so out of left field. Because if you would just, like some of these questions, like if you would just read history just a little, history that is just like accepted by all of everybody in the world, then you wouldn't even have this question. And what you would find is, what I'm saying is exactly the truth. It lines up with history. And the problem is, if they would do that, it would torpedo their whole position. And then all of their house of cards would fall apart. Then what? Well, what happens if that pastor becomes an Orthodox Christian?
And the whole church would fall apart, so would his income.
Yeah, he would become nothing. He would become like nobody. Like, when I found Orthodox Christianity, I stopped preaching, I stopped teaching. I mean, like, when I thought, like, this could be the church and I don't have a bishop that had given me a blessing to teach, I just stopped teaching. And I stopped preaching on the streets. I stopped all of that. It just stopped until, and I still did, we haven't done, we started doing some street ministry. But the point is, because a lot of people do a lot of good things out of pride. I'm not saying this guy does, but
a lot of money, because now he's expanding his church, because he's going from 300, looking to go to 1,000, and he's just all about right now growing, getting big.
Yeah, and I don't know this person from Adam, and all I know is that I know a lot of people who are doing a lot of good works, like the mission, Water Gardens Missions. It is a great organization. And they really do help a lot of people, and they are, and I really appreciate them, and I love them, and I want to see them succeed. So I mean, like, we can want to see people succeed at taking care of people who need help, but still, they still need to come into the church. So just, I know this is a big long side, but just to conclude it, just because we see people who are doing good things, we don't conclude that they're going to be right with God. Because it doesn't matter. None of us are good. The only thing that will save us is coming into the church, having the body and blood of Christ, and being humble. Because even if we get success over all of our mortal deeds, but we're arrogant, we'll be lost. And so that's it. So we have to be in Christ to have life. So that's the bottom line. I mean, that's just the bottom line. So 29. Did anybody there on Zoom have any questions about that? A little bit of a diversion, but it's still catechetical, so it's allowed, which is what we like. Live and local and lively. That it is necessary for each to be confirmed in his confession by appropriate works. John 5:36. These very works which I am doing bear me witness that the Father has sent me. So Jesus was healing people. He was giving sight to the blind, and he's saying, like, you can see that this is happening. If I am not doing the works of my Father, then do not believe me. But if I do them, even though you do not believe me, believe my works, that you may know and believe that the Father is in me and I am in the Father. In 2 Corinthians 6:3-4, we put no obstacle in anyone's way, so that no fault may be found with our ministry. But as servants of God, we commend ourselves in every way through great endurance in afflictions. And then he goes on to say all sorts of things. Now, just this is funny that this comes up right after our last conversation. But again, when St. Basil's writing this, there are no other churches. Like, there's no other churches. And so he's talking to people inside of the church. And he's trying to tell them, you have got to be doing the works of God. If you are in the church and you're not doing the things of God, how can you think that you're okay? Does that make sense? The way that you know that you are on the right path is that you're doing the things that Christ taught. They are confirmed. Your confession is confirmed because you're doing what Christ said. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Because I know after our last conversation, you could be like, well, Father, see, I guess maybe they are okay. No, that's not what he's saying, because he's talking to people inside of the Orthodox Church. There was no other church outside of this. And in fact, when St. Basil talked, the New Testament canon was not even established as like a rule yet. You know, like he died well before 381, and 381 is where a good majority accepted the 27 books, you know, although there was some places that had more books and a few places that had a few less. But at any rate, so make sure, again, that once you are baptized, that you start conforming your life to the teachings that Jesus is doing. I do think that one thing that is neat about this is that my wife was talking to somebody this week, and the conversation went, and there were some questions, like this person is not Orthodox, but they have a genuine heart, and they were saying, like, I struggle with this or I struggle with that. I think they're going to become Orthodox because they're very honest, a very honest person. And what about the saints? And then my wife, answered some questions, and then the person said, I guess it's kind of like we have a form of godliness, but we kind of deny the power thereof. Because like my wife was saying, like, well, in Orthodoxy, you see these miracles. You see people touching the relics and then they are healed, or they see, you see an icon that's literally like a piece of wood that had a painting painted on it, and then out of the wood comes myrrh oil. Like, it's miraculous. And people say, no, that can't be. Until you show them in the book of Acts, well, here's Peter's handkerchief that was carried to somebody who was sick, and they touched it and it healed them. Or Peter's walking along the road and people are just bringing their sick people lying there, so a shadow falls on them, and what happens? They get healed. And the person said, it's hard for me to see these things, but maybe it's just that we have only a form of godliness, but we're denying the power thereof. And that's kind of what he's getting at. We don't go up and we don't go and say like, hey, look, we've got a financial program to help people. We don't have a food pantry yet. We would like to. I mean, we have St. Basil's Kitchen, which is an organization that the church has, but it's basically not up and running yet because we have to get it finished, the basement finished. But we're not advertising for all these things. We don't advertise that miracles still happen. They just happen, and then people in the church hear about it, and it's like, wow, that's really amazing. Did you hear about that little girl who had that tumor and it just disappeared? And that's kind of like what he's also saying, kind of like in the church sense, like you see these things still happen. Like in the Orthodox Church, it's amazing. You see people really healed spiritually, which is like the one thing that doesn't seem to actually happen other places. Now, maybe on the outside, people like clean up their life, but on the we're talking about like on the very beginning level of the thoughts, people are healed, which of course heals all the outward things too. Where you can have like any sort of really strict fundamentalist Baptist or Anabaptist or whatever, and they can demand an outward appearance. But I mean, it's like dead men's bones underneath there. It's like whitewashed tombs. There's all sorts of horrible stuff that happens. I'm not saying that horrible stuff doesn't happen in the Orthodox Church. We just deal with it. We don't act like it doesn't exist in the first place, and then we say like, we're gonna kill it. Like, come to us, you who are sick, you who are heavy laden, and we will heal your sickness. And again, that's like a confirmation of the confession that we have, because Christ heals the soul. Okay. 30.1, that it is necessary not to disrespect the holy things by mingling them with things of common use. So here's this famous passage from Matthew chapter 21, verses 12 and 13. And Jesus entered the temple of God and drove out all who sold and bought in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. He said to them, it is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of robbers. And then 1 Corinthians chapter 11, Paul says, what? Do you not have houses to eat or drink in? Or do you despise the church of God and humiliate those who have nothing? If anyone is hungry, let him eat at home, lest you come together to be condemned. So this is why we have all sorts of church order, because we do not want the things that are holy to be mingled with the things that aren't. So if you didn't know this, you can't take anything out of the church building. So if you light a candle, or if you give money to get a candle and you put it out, you can't take that home. Because the things that have gone into, if you bring your own prayer book or whatever, we're not talking about that, but like the choir people who are in the choir, if they want to study, they have to get specific permission from me to release a book so it can go outside of the church building.
that little yellow book that we sing on, I
Uh-huh.
took that home. Do I need to take that back? First week we were here.
Mm-hmm. You should bring it back.
Oh, I bring it every week, but I shouldn't take it home.
We can photocopy one for you. Yeah, I mean, it really should stay in. But like, if the church borrows something from my house and it goes into the altar, it never leaves unless we throw it away. Like, so it's the same way. And this is also why we have the narthex and the nave and the altar. Like, there's certain levels of sanctification. That's why also we don't talk. That's why also we come and we dress appropriately. This is why we get cleaned up before we come. In most instances, sometimes you have to work until like right up to it and you just sneak in and you're a little dirty, but that's rarely the case. We should try to be clean and stuff because we don't want to mingle these holy things with things that are common. Go ahead.
What about on the instance of buying candles for personal use? Like buying the beeswax candles for burning at home on the icon corner?
Yeah, you mean from inside the church. If they're
Yeah.
inside the church and you're doing that, you need to make sure you pay enough to replace them. That's okay. Once we get the community center done, all the candles will be there and there will be prices on them. So that, because I hate that even we have anything that has a price on it, even in the narthex, even though the narthex is not considered like the church area, that's the nave. But all of the candles, like in the old days, you would have gone to a candle shop, bought candles, and then you would have offered them to the church. Like you would have offered them. What has happened in America, this is kind of off from what you were saying, but it is worth the lesson so everyone understands like the gift of candles. When we became Orthodox, candles are special, and we were told, I think me and Paula had this talk, but this is why I'm saying this, but we were encouraged. Paula almost came into the church just before my family actually came into the church about 8 years ago. And it was Father Moses who dealt with both of us. And he wanted us to want to get involved. And so he would be like, oh, just take candles. And their candles were much smaller than ours. Their services were much smaller. But they just said, just leave a donation. And every time we took candles, we just gave a big donation because we were just so thankful we finally found the church. It was like, we're actually here. Like, I want to give my money, all my money to God. But what happened a lot was people would just take candles because they thought that the candles were there to light up, to pray for loved ones, which is kind of the case. But actually, the real deal with candles was it used to be that we didn't have electricity, so people would go to the candle shop, buy candles for the church, like electricity, and give it to the church. Sometimes in their mind, they were making this offering for their children. Maybe they had some parents who had passed on already, and they wanted to give this as an offering to God to remember their loved one who had already passed on. Does that make sense? Offering to God in remembrance of something, as opposed to lighting it for somebody and the church is providing you with the ability to pray for somebody. And that's the second, what I just said is actually how most people think candles are supposed to be used. Like the church, why don't we have enough candles out here? The church needs to give me more candles so I can go and pray for more people. When it's actually the opposite. The candles were bought by the people in the church, both the laity and the clergy, to offer to God to illumine the space. But that gift, just like if somebody maybe had a windfall and they inherited like 40 acres or something and they sold it and they brought 10% to God, they may say, we're giving this on behalf of our little Janie who died when she was 2 years old. And we would like you to build, a baptismal area or something. Does that make sense? It's not that everybody's having to build a baptismal thing, but it's that they're giving their money to offer to God for something in behalf of a memory of somebody else or something. Anyway, I don't think we have that issue because we kind of try to talk about it enough here, but this is kind of one of those things that's more prevalent in the OCA. In the old Rocourt churches where they don't have narthexes, they just have candles in the back of the church, and people go and buy them back there. And when I was coming in as having been a Protestant, it was so scandalous to me to see stuff being sold in the church building, and I really still hate it. I understand now, like, you don't have another building outside, but it's still like Jesus flipping the tables over and like the money changers. It just is kind of cringy, But
I guess that's for personal gain, though. When he was flipping over.
That was for personal gain. Yeah, everybody who buys any of these things that are in the back of the church, they benefit. Like the books that are in the back there. It's like nobody's benefiting from that except for if we charge $2 or $3 more, it's just to cover the shipping and handling of the book or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Okay, we digressed. Here we go. 30.31.1. That it is necessary not to squander on others what has been reserved. I missed 30. Sorry, 30.2. That it is necessary to honor as holy what is dedicated to God, so long as the will of God is preserved in it. And this is basically saying there are things that we honor God for, but you can then put them higher than the higher law of God, which is justice and mercy. So here Jesus says, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, killing the prophets and stoning those who were sent to you, how often I have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you would not have it. Behold, your house is forsaken and desolate. Now 31.1, that it is necessary not to squander on others what has been reserved for those dedicated to God, unless there be some extra. And here's the passage, Mark. Now the woman was a Greek, a Syrophoenician by birth, and she begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. And he said, let the children first be fed, for it is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. But she answered him, yes, Lord, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. And he said to her, for this saying, you may go your way. The demon has left your daughter. So here, the basic principle is that we only have so much material stuff to deal with, like that we can help people with. And we are required to take care of our own people first. Okay, so if we have a single mother who is in need of something, and then somebody comes knocking in as a homeless guy, and they're like, I really need something, but this single mother is in our parish, and it's like, well, we only have enough to give to either one or the other. Then we give to our persons. Does that make sense? It's not a very hard principle. The reason it's important to understand is because you're going to be asked to help all the time. I mean, all the time we're asked to help in all sorts of ways. And your first obligation is to your people in your parish. Okay, so, and then if the parish ends up having excess, it will distribute it to however, the bishop or the priest determine. But, so if you end up becoming a millionaire, or, Joplin grows to 3 million and your transportation company is like the first one on the ground level and you have 700 cars and you become like a really rich business guy, then it's your obligation to give to the church first, and then out of your surplus beyond your first 10%, then you give to whoever you feel like giving to or whatever. Does that make sense? So it's not just that this is a principle from the church to other people, though it is, but it's also for you to understand your role. So if Severian crashes his car, he hits 2 more deer this year, and he takes out 2 more cars. He hit 2 deer last year, right? 2?
It was earlier this year, but
Yeah. 2 deer. Like in 2 weeks.
Oh.
2 weeks in a row.
What a nightmare.
It was bad.
And then your uncle, well, Severian trumps your uncle because he's your brother in Christ. Does that make sense? Yeah.
You can finish that.
Go ahead. No, that's the main thing.
So, I'm trying to think how to word it. Essentially, what about in ways that aren't simply in giving a material good or anything that's monetary? Like, for example, let's say my dad is working on a bunch of cattle and he needs help working on the cattle, but I need to go and help I don't know how it would work out, but like someone who's really sick, and if I don't give them like this food who's within the church or something, it'll be really horrible for them. The obligation is, of course, obviously that would help the one who's sick first. But what about in the areas that are a little bit more gray? Like, again, my dad needs help with cattle, but someone in the church needs help moving into the new house.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the only one who can help them at like this day.
Well, you just have to use discernment. You just have to use discernment in these situations. So probably you wouldn't be the only one in the parish that would be able to help that person. And if this day is the day that your dad needs help, I mean, it might be a more righteous thing to do to help your father for the sake of the love of Christ and for his salvation than to be at the work. We're going to have work days where we help build people's houses and so forth. Like Zacchaeus and Nona are gonna build a house out in Mount Vernon on their property. We'll all go over there several times and help. But if one of those days is the day that your dad has off and he's gonna work his 25 cows, then you should just be at your dad's. But if every time we have a work day, nobody goes except for Father Stephen and my sons, then I'm going to start saying, okay, guys, get your calendars fixed because you've been helping enough people. Now we got to help people in the church. Does that make sense? But that's probably not going to happen. So you need to just use discernment. And if you don't know, just call, like, I don't know, is there a lot of help coming? Is there not help coming? And then you can just fill it out like that. Because it is important to make sure that you help those in the world, because it might be that is, you do not ever want to be the priest or the Levite, like in the parable of the Good Samaritan, who walked past the person who was bloodied on the ground because of church stuff. That's not the heart of Christ. The heart of Christ, like if you are going to go to vigil and you're on your way and you see somebody that's broke down, but you're like, I'm a catechumen, I've got to go, I've got to make sure I do this. The most important thing to worship God is to go, which is true in general. But you need to help that person. I mean, you cannot just drive past somebody who needs your help. You have to. I'm not saying pick up every homeless guy, but I am saying, like, if somebody is in desperate need of your help, don't just turn a blind eye to that person. Don't be the Pharisee or the Levite who just left the person there. Go ahead.
I drive 36 miles one-way to work.
Mhm.
I see a lot of people on the side of the road. Do I need to stop every time I see someone on the side of the road, like in a vehicle, or?
No, I mean, you just need to have discernment. Like the last 6 years, every time that like let's say 85% of the time that I've stopped, people are like, oh no, somebody's coming already. So if it looks like it's an emergency,
Right.
be willing to stop, you know. But you don't want somebody to die on account of you're not having taken, 5 minutes to stop and pull over, find out somebody's having a seizure and call the ambulance or something,
Now I feel like I should stop every time.
And you're gonna have to just use discernment.
Okay, all right.
Leave 10 minutes earlier.
I guess a way better question would be to ask, not like that trumps yours, but I mean, for my question is, how do you build this discernment? This seems to be an incredibly difficult thing to actually ascertain.
Discernment's the 26th step on the ladder of 30 steps. It's-
Okay, it'll be
It
very
is. It's a hard thing. You just have to go after it. You just have to live and have a lot of time under your belt. And you make a lot of mistakes, and you apologize a lot, and you just try to do better every day, a little bit better every day. And then you beg God to grant you discernment and wisdom. And the biggest thing is even being aware of the things that you need to do or try to do. If you don't know that you need to be aware of stopping and helping people, you won't even think about it. You won't be feeling conviction if you should have stopped, and you won't have to work through those things. But if you start recognizing, oh, should I have done this? Should I have not done that? Then you start gaining the ability to start making decisions. I'm going to stop this time, or okay, when I see this kind of like this, it's probably not a big deal or something. And you start learning just a little bit at a time, but it just takes the, whatever it is, the way you gain knowledge is by doing it. So like nobody's going to be a good gardener unless they go and start putting seeds in the ground. Like I didn't become a great gardener because, I just knew everything when I was in 7th grade. No, when I was in 7th grade, I was like, oh, I think it would be really cool to plant some beet seeds. And then I borrowed somebody's tiller and I put them in and it worked. And then other times I tried and I failed. And you will never learn if you don't try and fail. So you just have to understand failure is a must. Just like pain is a must. Discomfort is a must. If you ever want to learn and gain wisdom, all of those things you have to become very comfortable with. If you want to love, and you want to love like Christ, you will also learn how to deal with great pain, because you cannot love without having pain. So all I'm saying is you just got to get in there. You just got to get in the game. It's all right. So anyway, yeah, you just got to get in there. That's all I can say. It's just like time is, this is why I told you, and I tell all these young men, like the most important thing for you to do is not to be sitting and reading and analyzing and writing out your thoughts in these books, but it's to read what's given to you and then to go to work and experience life. Get done with work and go be with people and fail. And then come back bloodied, get cleaned up, sit in the corner of the ring and have Father Stephen wipe the blood off your face and put the smelly stuff under your nose and say, okay, get back out there, champ, you can do this. I'm scared. Yeah, of course. That's a big world out there. Probably gonna put you down on the ground a couple more times, but you can take it. And that's That's how you grow. There's just no way around it. I mean, it's not gonna happen without getting in it. So, sorry, I mean, that's not really great news, but I am telling you that's reality. And one thing that you have to understand, and this is why it's so hard, because if you don't know what I just said, and then you also think you know a lot, and you have a lot of wisdom, and you're just really smart, and then you start, with that, you think, oh, I'm a really smart guy, or I know all this spiritual stuff, and then you go to the spiritual father, and you're like, do whatever I need to really be sanctified. And when a spiritual father hears that, they just think everybody's being honest, and then they go and tell you the truth about yourself, but you have these two big problems that I just said. Then I've seen it over and over, and then you just give up. And it's never your fault. It's always the spiritual father's fault. But it's actually not the spiritual father's fault. It's the person's fault, because they were proud and they thought they knew more than they did. And really, they didn't know. They don't know anything. Usually when you start, you don't know anything. And you haven't had any experience, and you didn't actually want the training that you said you so badly wanted. Because when you just get and some of these people get a little bit of training, then they just quit. So, anyways, you have to start out being humble. You have to start out knowing it's going to be hard, and you've got to start out being willing to hear things that are going to maybe hurt a little. And if you accept that, actually, the pain is super small. Because if you embrace it before, then you might not even feel it, actually. Because it's not for me, it's not like when I have to correct somebody, it's not like I really want this to hurt. No, I'm gonna make it so it's really painful. That is not how I think. I'm like, how can I say this the most gentle, so that somebody's not discouraged? You're with me? But if you, as the catechumen, can say okay, this is reality, and I just got to get in the fight, or I've got to get into the garden, or I've got to get on the field, or whatever analogy you want to use, that's going to help you, strive for Christ, then you're going to do just fine.
Be teachable.
Mm-hmm. Like the best athletes, the best athletes that are world-class athletes, they go and find the best coaches. And you know what those coaches do? They tell them everything that they do wrong, everything, all the time. You moved your hand a centimeter too far to the right. You shouldn't have done that. Don't do that ever again. Don't move it that far, because if you do, you'll miss the catch. We're talking but those people submit themselves on purpose to be criticized so that they can go to the next level. You don't have that kind of coach in me, sorry. I'm not gonna make you world class, but I will try to get you on a normal level of what should be functionable. But okay, here we go. That it is 32. That it is necessary to give each what is due in fairness. Luke 20, 21 through 25. They asked him, "Teacher, we know that you speak and teach rightly and show no partiality, but truly teach the way of God. Is it lawful for us to give tribute to Caesar or not?" But he perceived their craftiness and said to them, "Then render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." Then Romans 13, therefore pay all of them their dues, taxes to whom taxes are due, revenue to whom revenue is due, respect to whom respect is due, honor to whom honor is due. Owe no one anything except to love one another. So there you have, he's not talking, his principle here is not talking about this so-called fairness, equality between everybody else. He's saying just do a fair job of rendering to everybody the things that you should render to them. So we pay taxes, and Christians don't. We are not the people going off in bunkers, showing that we don't have to pay taxes according to some loophole to prove, we're not anarchists. There are people who believe that we shouldn't pay any taxes. There's books written, and you can find all these things, and so some people never, ever, ever, ever pay income taxes or whatever. That's their prerogative as a human being. But as an Orthodox Christian, we just pay the government what they say we owe. We don't make a big fuss. Sometimes we make fuss more than we need to. But actually, we get taxed a lot, but they got taxed a lot too. Jesus did. But we have really nice roads, and we have people that will stop traffic if our car breaks down the middle of the highway that the government pays for. I mean, we get a lot of benefits, and because of it, I think we're very unthankful. So we need to, again, if we have a humble heart, we'll just do these things without complaining. And the income tax code, even though it's big and huge and crazy, it is actually so good to anybody who's trying to really work hard and better themselves. Like if you're a small business owner, you can write off almost everything. You have to make so much money to pay taxes. If you're just a regular person and you're not like putting money back into the economy. Anyways, that's not the point here. We can talk about business later. Point is, just give to people, the government, who it's due, give respect to those who it's due, so forth. 33, that it is necessary not to scandalize, but whoever scandalizes one of these little ones, it would be better for him to have a millstone fastened around his neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. And again, woe to the man who scandalizes, who from whom scandal comes. And again, scandal is like a stone that causes somebody to trip. It's something like that. Romans 14:13, but rather decide never to put a stumbling block or scandal in the way of a brother. So you want to do your best to not do this. And that's why you need to be thinking about others. You don't want to do something, even if you have the freedom scripturally and under the church's teaching, if it could cause somebody to stumble because of a misunderstanding or something like that. Does that make sense?
So when we have a product and someone pays cash, like the story, people pay you cash so that, it's off the books or whatever, do we have to still write that down?
Mm-hmm.
So there's no such thing as off the books and cash?
Not if you're honest.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I was just asking.
I'm sorry. I mean, I no, trust me, for years people said, hey, I'll pay you cash, because they were trying to help us. And it actually didn't help us. It was just like, makes it a little more difficult to keep track, because people are like giving us cash, and then we have to write down $42 from, Richardson. And then at the end of the day, we maybe have like $227.75 in the packet, because instead of checks. But we record everything, Now, I mean, to be honest, there are some people who go so overboard with that I've heard of wives, just causing such marital problems because they're so sure their husband is stealing from the government and lying because they didn't report one thing or whatever. You just need to try to be honest and be fair.
I just asked them, when I'm at market, we have to write down our sales, and then we have to pay a percent based on our sales. So they know everything, and then they give me a thing at the end of the year, this is how much you've made.
Yeah.
So they know how much I make. But
Yeah, no. Yeah, I think it's better to do that. I mean, I think there are some things like, yeah, I mean, you just need to do your best to be as honest as you can be. Like the Orthodox Christians need to be thought of as the most honest people, in the world. Okay, 33.2, that everything opposed to the will of God is a scandal. Everything that is opposed to the will of God is a scandal. From that time on, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and the chief priests and the scribes, and be killed on the third day, be raised. And Peter took him and began to rebuke him, saying, God forbid, Lord, this shall never happen to you. Okay, so here, so far, Jesus is telling them that he's going to be persecuted. And that's not what the scandal is. The scandal is here that Peter then says, God forbid this thing. So what would seem like a scandal to us, like, whoa, Jesus, who is good, is going to be persecuted and killed. I mean, for me, my gut instinct is exactly what Peter said. Like, no, Lord, because he was feeling like that's a scandal to him. Like to see his master be killed, the greatest person in the whole world. No way. And Jesus is like, get behind me, Satan. You are a scandal to me. For you are not on the side of God, but on men. Because God's will was that this truth in this great thing would happen, that it would have only happened through this painful experience of him suffering on the cross. So next, 33, this will be our last one for the night. That it is necessary to be averted even from what is authorized by Scripture, whether word or deed. So that even if there are things that we're allowed to do, those things should be averted, when others might be encouraged to sin thereby and might be driven from their zeal for the good. So here, this is out of 1 Corinthians chapter 8. And Paul says, hence, as to the eating of food offered to idols, we know that an idol has no real existence and that there is no God but one. For although there may be so-called gods in heaven and on earth, as indeed there are many gods and many lords, yet for us there is one God, the Father, from whom are all things and for whom we exist, and one Lord Jesus Christ, through whom all things and through whom we exist. However, not all possess this knowledge, but some, through being hitherto accustomed to idols, eat food as really offered to an idol, and their conscience being weak is defiled. Food does not, so what he's saying that right there was that some people don't realize that these idols aren't really, this food is not really offered to a God, but they eat it because their conscience is weak and they shouldn't. And so then they eat that food that was offered to an idol, and then they're defiled. But then he goes on to say, food does not condemn us to God, for we are not worse off if we do not eat, or no better off if we do. Only take care lest this liberty of yours somehow become a stumbling block to the weak. For if anyone sees you, a man of knowledge, at the table of an idol's temple, might he not be encouraged, if his conscience is weak, to eat food offered to idols? And so, by your knowledge, this weak brother is destroyed, for whom Christ died. Thus, sinning against your brother and wounding their conscience when it is weak, you sin against Christ. Therefore, if food scandalizes my brother, I will never eat meat, lest I scandalize my brother. Do we not have the right to our food and drink? Do we not have the right to be accompanied by a wife, as the other apostles and the brother of the Lord and Cephas? Or is it only Barnabas and I who have no right to refrain from working for a living? Who serves as a soldier at his own expense? Who plants a vineyard without eating any of its fruit? Who tends the flock without getting some of the milk? And what follows. So anyways, his point is, you could be eating the meat that was offered to these things
Because you know better.
because you know that it's not. But if you eat it and you're there, because what would happen, there was like a cafe at these places, and you're eating it, and some catechumen walks by and they see you eating food here, and they're like, he's eating food. He's worshiping idols. And these people who grew up as Greeks or pagans who have not quite understood to the full extent that God is just one. You see, that's why catechism was so long for those people, because they had all these crazy ideas and they had to get all of that weaned out of them. So they would see this and then they would be really stumbled. And so his main point is, don't ever do that or anything that you would be allowed to do if it could potentially hurt a brother or a sister. Okay, so what would be an example of that? This would be an example. Like we know that like he just said, food or whatever. But if let's say this one, we know that alcohol is just a substance, but it can make somebody drunk. Okay. And in the old world, still, even to this day, it's like water, alcohol, wine, beer, whatever. It's just another thing to drink. In America, this is not how it is, especially with the Protestant influence. And so if somebody has come to the church who is Protestant and they see at the coffee hour that there's beer and wine, okay, and this is how it is at some parishes. I'm kind of saying this so that you just understand and you're not shocked. That's not a sin, but it could cause somebody to stumble. Okay, so what if somebody has struggled with alcoholism or something, and they see this, or they grew up in a really strict Baptist home or something, and they see alcohol, and they say like, this must not be Christian, because they don't have enough knowledge yet to understand it's not the chemical or the substance that's the sin, it's the overuse of it. Just like you could eat too much and the consequence would still be the same, like gluttony. Like gluttony is a deadly sin. If you're a glutton and you die in the state of gluttony, it's a deadly sin. Getting drunk, it's a deadly sin. Fornicating, looking at a woman to lust after her, it's a deadly sin. You with me? Like all these things are deadly sins. But like in our parish, I don't allow alcohol at our big feasts and meals, even though at a lot of the parishes in the country, you would see wine, because wine is special. It's special for a lot of people. And it's something that's a treat. It's expensive. But we don't do it at our parish because I don't want anybody to stumble. Although, it's not wrong for somebody to have alcohol. So, does that make sense? Okay, you have a question?
Me?
Yeah, okay.
Now I got two.
Okay.
So the first one is, this conflict, now I understand the whole verse.
I know what you're going to say. It
Okay.
conflicts with what Paul says in a later
Yeah.
place. Don't eat meat to idols.
Yeah, how come? Yeah.
Which passage is that at?
Oh, I'll Google it to ask, but basically, isn't that is it with Cornelius? And
No.
all of that? No, with where all the, it's probably an Acts.
I think that the primary thing is that was written at one time and this was written at another time, and the main point was the people who were eating meat that was offered to idols, they thought that they were offering to idols. Like they were super young in the faith. That's what I understand. Like, it's related to this passage. So what if in the church there was somebody who you could go and you were eating at this idol cafe, but then that person walks by and they don't know that this is not a real God. They're just eating like meat from a duck from the Muslim store, you know. Somebody walks by though and they're like, ah. In the other passage, if that person were to go in there and buy meat, if that person who saw that guy eating the meat, that guy has no problem eating the meat even there, because he's just like, it's food and these people.
Yeah, but that's this.
Yeah, that's that. But that guy sees him and then he comes back for supper and he worships an idol. He worships a demon because he's eating there. He's thinking like, well, he was worshiping the demon, so I guess it's okay to worship the Trinity God, but I can also worship this other God.
Yeah, but in the other one, it's saying, don't eat food sacrificed to idols, meat strangled, the blood, and it was three things, and
fornication.
Yeah,
That's Acts 15.
I thought it was in Acts.
Acts 15,
yeah.
okay.
So there in Acts, he's saying, don't do these four things, and eating food to idols is one of them. And then here it's basically, if you know better, you can.
Yeah, but his point is and I think that passage in Acts is identifying this, what I just said, like these people, some of these people were thinking that they were worshiping idols.
So those people can't eat food to idols because everybody around you is going to think what you're doing. So it's more isolated.
Yeah, I would have to read it more, but because it is a contradiction. It seems like a contradiction, but the bigger point is this: like, if I was going to say like pick which is the higher principle, because we're looking at principle. The higher principle that he's saying is, don't do anything that's going to cause somebody to stumble. You know, and but then the other principle would be like, since I am not God and I don't know how to discern all these just off the top of my head, just don't eat anything to idols. That's what I would suggest.
Don't eat Campbell's.
Campbell's food.
Campbell's soup has got halal meat all over it. It's sacrificed to halal.
Well, halal is just a mechanism of purification, like it's like clean, right?
No, it's actually sacrificed. It's actually, they pray over it and they dedicate it to halal.
Oh.
Should I not have told you that?
Well, I'm kind of with Paul on this. Like, I don't think these things are. I don't think it's a big deal because I'm not like.
It's okay, Campbell's.
You don't want to eat Campbell's anyways because it's got enough salt in it. But I mean, like the problem with going off on like looking at every ingredient and these types of things is that you then begin to be maybe hyper focused on one thing.
Yeah, you can't go to Chinese food because they have the Buddha doll in there. Then you become like that.
Or you can't go to Walmart because they support homosexuality, or
Exactly.
Target, or Dollar General, or anywhere, or even to the cheap store that the Mennonites have, because the companies that produce those things that they get for almost nothing, that they sell for 50 cents, are still produced by these bad people. So, does that make sense? Like, you're damned if you do.
Problem.
Yeah.
I was just.
So we just have to. You have to live.
Right.
You have to live. I mean, it's a good thing to recognize, and it would be good to go through. We don't have idols temples where they have restaurants anymore. You know, and if we did, I would be like, it'd be better not to go there. You know, but other question.
I would not have thought that you would have beer. I mean, I could see wine for a little bit for the stomach's sake.
Yeah.
And not too much, but beer. Yeah, that works on my Like, I don't think so, it's a brawler, no.
But it's totally allowed. I mean, for in the church it was allowed, but we don't have it when there's a lot of people because people have a hard time. I mean, if we're going to use wine as a brawler as a reason to forbid
No,
it,
beer is a brawler, wine is the.
is a mocker.
Is a mocker, yeah.
But there's much more in Proverbs to tell people not to use wine than beer.
I don't use any, but I'm just saying that, like, I know people do, so I don't.
Yeah,
People that do, but-
I'm just saying that this is a perfect example of something that is actually allowed in the church that you need to have great discretion on. Okay,
Mhm.
just like if somebody plays video games, which I think nobody should play video games, but it's not a rule that you have to stick to. I just think it's very bad for you. I think that you should be careful to not just have people over and then be like, let's play video games. Because what if somebody is trying to get off of video games?
Mhm.
Or, something like this. Same with television. I think that people should have perspective that some people who might come over to supper might struggle with stuff that's on the television. And if it's playing, like you're having them over as a guest, I'm like, the point of what St. Basil is saying is you need to have greater love for those people who are going to be in your orb than you do for yourself. So restrain yourself on all sorts of areas so that you don't cause anybody to stumble. Okay? Now, if somebody is so like, one of these critical persons that's just really, like it talks about in the Apostolic Constitution, it's just super critical and scornful, wanting to, and they're like, oh, I can't believe they're wearing green. It's green on a Thursday. That really causes me to stumble. No, then that person needs to grow up, But there are genuine cultural things that people have to deal with, okay? And it's inside of the church. So you have the church, like in the Russian church, smoking is completely considered absolutely a no-no. It's a taboo. In the Antiochian church, and in the South, like in Africa, it was never a big thing. Like cigar smoking, pipe smoking, it was just like something that they did. And so still to this day in different jurisdictions, you'll have people who will smoke pipes or smoke cigars or whatever, and will do it even at like coffee hour or whatever. Okay. And so if young men, because usually it's young men who ask to do this, priests are not allowed to smoke, or they're not supposed to. Like it's at least in Russian Orthodox Church, absolutely we're not allowed to. But if somebody's like, Father, is it okay if we go over there and smoke a pipe? I would say, like, no, I don't think so. I have said, because it's already happened a few times, I don't think so. Let's not do that, because we don't want anybody to stumble. And to be honest, I don't really have an issue with people smoking pipes or anything. Like I don't think it's damaging to you. I think that if you're on any sort of pharmaceutical medicine, that's way worse. You see, this is kind of how I think about these things. Like people are using what I think of as very negative psychedelics, but they call them SSRs.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
It's like ADHD medicine or depressive medicine or like amp you up medicine or calm you down medicine. Stuff like this is very, very dangerous. Or people take ibuprofen all the time because their back hurts, but they could just smoke a pipe. I'm not suggesting this. People who are watching on YouTube, I'm not saying don't take your ibuprofen and smoke a pipe instead. I'm just saying that when I consider these things, I'm looking at data of what is actually more damaging, and I am not looking for myself at what the cultural taboos are, because we live in a culture that was built by a Masonic culture that wanted people to be guided by superstition and like fake piety. And I don't buy that garbage. I want to know what is okay and what's not okay, and I want to know what is a sin and what's not a sin. I want you to know that, and then I want you to know that these other areas people may struggle with, and don't do those things around somebody that you could cause them to stumble. And don't get up and toot your horn like, oh yeah, we're Orthodox Christians, we drink wine, like, no, that's not Orthodox Christian. We don't go out there and we're not some wine bibbers, Like if you're gonna drink, we follow the Father Josiah rule. Only two whatevers, no more than that. No getting drunk ever, never. So anyways, okay, so that kind of diverted. Okay, any other questions? We're done for the evening, and I am late. I didn't mean to. I was going to stop early because my throat was getting sore, but threw in some little bit of scandalous info. But it's good. We have to go over these things, some of these things that are shocking, that can be shocking. So, okay, with that, we have some visitors coming tomorrow for the weekend, and then we have Joshua Hoffer from Boston is going to come out next week on Wednesday. So he'll be hanging out for 4 or 5 days here. So he'll come to class here live next week. And on the schedule, it says no class next week because I was planning on being at the monastery, but because my son Caleb's baby has not arrived yet, I'm not going on a trip. So we're going to have class next week, next Thursday and Friday.
Where's the schedule that I've never seen?
It's online.
Sometimes they're in the
Yeah. So, okay, dear ones, let's pray. Do the prayers of our Holy Fathers, Lord